Alright people, welcome to the first episode of FNM Fun Deck. This is my little show that I like to showcase all my FNM decks, if I get to play at FNM, because, you know, sometimes I don't. This is one of the decks that I played that I got 4-0 in at my FNM, like last week? Yeah, last week. And it's a red-green deck. It's loosely based off of Brian Keibler's, was it Blade Breaker deck, that's what it's called it. But I basically just used the cards that I had to replace the cards that I didn't. So, let's start with the mana fixers. Okay, so we have the 4 Birds of Paradise just for acceleration. And then another one that I felt was really good was the Overgrown Battlements because of its 0-4 butt. Because you'll see later that I run Slagstorm to main deck. Let's see, Rampant Growth. This was a hard decision for me because it was between Rampant Growth, Cultivate, or Explore. But I found that with Explore, I didn't really have the mana in hand, and I'd have to rip a mana to be able to utilize Explore's add additional land ability, but I figured the Rampant Growth was actually more solid and more stable for the mana acceleration, because you're guaranteed a land. That's my mana acceleration, and this usually gets me to 4 mana by turn 3 really fast. So it's pretty, you'll see that with this deck, getting to 4 mana on turn 3 is pretty crucial. Now for some of my utility creatures, we have the Goblin Rune Blaster. This hasn't really seen much play lately, but I still believe this is a very good card because it really just handles, it manhandles Valakut and all sorts of like man lands and even Inkmoth Nexuses, which is really annoying. And then of course the ultimate utility creature is the Acidic Slime. Not only does it hit lands, artifacts, and enchantments, it's also a 2/2 with Death Touch, so any creature it touches is basically just going to die. And it's just the ultimate blocker if you just want to block a Titan or, you know, just block anything. It'll kill it instantly. And then another utility creature is my Obstinate Baloths. This card's just pretty much amazing. If they make you discard, like, if they despise you at the right time, you get a free Baloth. If they Liliana Vest you, you get a free Baloth. If they hit you with the Sword of Feast and Famine, you get a Baloth. And it's just a 4/4 that gain 4 life. It's just an all-around good creature. What I would change though in this deck, if I had the extra Thrun, which is over here, was I would put a Thrun in and take out a Baloth. Because I think Thrun's a very, very cool card, I think. It's a 4 mana for a 4/4. It can't be countered. And he basically just doesn't die because he has Hexproof. It's just an all-around good card, and 2 main deck Thruns, it just ruins people's days. There's very few decks that want to see a 4 mana 4/4 that just doesn't die, because he's just a problem once he hits the board. Caw-Blade has a hard time getting rid of him. Mono Blue, well not Mono Blue, Blue Black has a hard time getting rid of him. He's just a really big problem once he hits the board, and I think he can reliably hit the board. Turn 3, maybe turn 5 if you want the regeneration mana up, which is kind of viable. You kind of want that against Caw-Blade, so either or, he's a really big problem. And then these are my big beefies, by the way. Wurmcoil Engine, this card's just, he's a headache for a lot of decks. Like Mono Red, Goblins, I don't know, any deck that has a hard time removing him. He's just instant game winner right here. And then my third one is Inferno Titan. This card is underplayed, I believe. Inferno Titan is he's just huge. He's a 6 mana Arc Trail basically, and if he gets there, he gets there. If he hits you once, you're basically dead, because that's 9 damage right there to the face. We have our removal, which is basically why red is in here. We play the 4 Lightning Bolts. Most people in this deck would play, I guess, the 4 Burst Lightning, but I think Lightning Bolt's better in this deck because it's just early on removal. You don't have to sweat over, oh, do I want to deal 2 damage or 4? The Arc Trail is just infinite 2-for-1. It always gets 2-for-1 basically. So I run 3 of those in there, and then normally these 2 were supposed to be in the sideboard, but I felt that at my FNM they were playing a lot of weenie decks. They had a lot of small creatures I just had a hard time dealing with. Arc Trail wasn't getting there, so I decided to play the 2 Slagstorms main. And then, of course, I end up with a lot of mana and not a lot of gas at the end games. So the Red Sun Zenith is pretty decent. I find myself dishing out, 6-7 damage with the Red Sun Zenith from game to game. So that's basically the main deck. And as for lands, I played the 6 Forests, I play 4 Copperline Gorge, 2 Tectonic Edge. I'm thinking about wrapping this to at least the 3, maybe 4, but 2 for right now. And then I have 5 Mountains, 4 Rootbound Crag, and then the 2 Raging Ravines. This card actually gets there quite a bit. If they nuke the board and Thrun just somehow accidentally dies, like to a Black Sun Zenith, Raging Ravine always gets there. So that's basically the main deck. This deck is basically geared towards my FNM, my metagame. So you can take this list and tweak it to basically just, you know, play well in your FNM. So take it for what it is. This is the FNM Fun Deck number 1, and then let me take you to the sideboard. Alright, and here's my sideboard. Again, I want to stress that this is for my playgroup only. My FNM, I know my metagame, okay? So if your metagame's different, play something else in your sideboard. This is just for basically to handle weenies, the Burst Lightning. It's just more instant speed removal for like Infect and all sorts of other stuff, maybe goblins. You just want to get rid of their small creatures that can just become a problem later on in the game. Combust is mainly for cards like Hero of Oxid Ridge. I find that card is kind of hard to deal with my main board removal. If I have a Titan on the board, it's not that bad, but, you know, double Arch Trails is basically, or an Arch Trail Lightning Bolt is the only way to get rid of him, because Slagstorm doesn't even hit him. So I think the 2 Combust is pretty good. Nature's Claim is really good against, like, Tempered Steel, or it gets rid of Inkmoth Nexus really well, so I might even bring that again against Cobblade. Wow, okay. I'd bring that in for the swords, I guess, too. Creep and Corrosion. This card's pretty much an MVP, because against decks like Koldatha Red or Tempered Steel, this is usually always at least a 3-for-1. You play that, wipe their board, they have to reset, and given this list right here, it's really hard to reset against this list, because I'll have maybe a Wurmcoil out by that time, a Baloth, or a Titan out. So Creep and Corrosion's pretty nice. The Roiling Terrain is a pretty fun card. Brian Keibler used it in his sideboard too. I think it's pretty decent considering all the land removal we have. We have Tectonic Edge, we have Acidic Slime, we have Goblin Rune Blaster, so usually Roiling Terrain, once it dishes another land to the graveyard, they usually take about 5 or 6 damage per terrain. And then finally the 2 Slagstorm, just so I can have 4 Wrath effects in my deck. So that's my sideboard, and again, if your FNM's different, then play a different sideboard, but this is what I play.